Hello and welcome to Trial TV Live. I am the Squeegee of Justice. Thank you so much for joining us today as we continue with our coverage of California versus Monica Sementilli, day 40 or day 3 of states closing. So, Thursday and Friday of last week, because today is Monday. I hope you guys all had a great weekend. Ms. Silverman talked for 4 hours and 50 minutes on day 38 and 4 hours and 40 minutes on day 39. So she is at 9 hours at this point. 9 hours and 10 minutes. So that's where we stand with, that's where we stand. I'm thinking she's gonna, well, let's do a new poll. How much longer will she talk? Let's do a new poll. How is everybody feeling today? Did you guys have good weekends? Let's see who we have. Baca is first. Pammy is second. Brat, third. Butterfly Dana, fourth. Rosie Grace, hello to you. Missy Russell, good to see you. Sinbad, thank you. Remembering your son's Michael's birthday. Would have been 41 today. Aw. Well, here's to your son, Sinbad. Hola, good morning to you, Father. How you doing? Dreamer. Thank you for joining us. Missy Russell. It's Monday. Weekends go by so fast. That is true. Therapist, you know. Hello to you. Sandra Beach. Thank you for joining us. Only fan. Gordon, good to see you. Thank you for joining us. Irish Amy. Hello, hello. All right, let's do a new poll. How much longer will Miss Silverman go, I guess? We'll do 0 to 1 hours, 1 to 2 hours, 2 to 3 hours, 3 plus. All right, so 0 to 1 hours, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 plus. Start poll. All right. New poll out there for you, chat. And for those, let's see, I'll put it in here. New poll for you, chat. All right. So just so you guys know, a couple things. A, we've got storms coming through. I know everybody that was like in the Midwest and the Plains and South, that's all coming to us. So I know it's really weird, wild weather, snowing in Oklahoma and yeah, bad weather, tornadoes, all kinds of stuff. We're supposed to have some pretty heavy winds today into tonight. So our schedule for today is we're going to watch Monica from 12 until 1:30. So when they take their morning break, that's when we're going to stop, because then Lori Daybell we're going to pick up on her at 2 o'clock, right? Well, 1:50, 1:45, 1:50. So today we're just going to do the morning for Monica. Then we're going to pick up Lori all day, and then we're going to do a recap of day 1, Lori Daybell with Joe Schmo, because he's at the court. He's actually right there right now. He posted a picture on Twitter about him being there. So then tomorrow morning, 8:30 our time Eastern, we're going to watch what we didn't watch today, the afternoon. And then we'll continue on from 12 until 1:30. We'll do live, whatever they have live tomorrow. And we'll jump back over to Lori, do the exact same thing. And then Wednesday, I'm hoping Wednesday will be in Verdict Watch. So Wednesday, we'll pick up whatever we missed on Tuesday, which is probably going to be defense closing and jury instructions. So we'll pick up Wednesday morning, whatever we miss on Tuesday, and then we'll be live Wednesday. We're going to dual stream. Hopefully that will work out. So we're going to dual stream, and we'll be live for Monica. I don't want to miss that. Hey, G Stewie, how are you? Good to see you. Thank you for joining us. Billy Moore, awesome, man. Good morning to you. How are you? Gordon, why isn't there a time limit on opening closings? Is that a state judge thing? As far as I know, I don't know if it's a state thing or a judge thing. I'm just not sure. Hey, Brat, good morning to you. Baka, scroll up from my music recommendation. What was your music recommendation? Let's see. Baka. Oh, yeah. Sarah McLachlan, Arms of an Angel. That's a beautiful song. That'll definitely bring tears to your eyes. Irish Amy, my optimism has been crushed. You voted 3+. I have zero nice or hopeful things to say about this woman, so I'm going to keep my face hole closed. Okay, fair enough. Father, in one of the trials that started this morning, the prosecution didn't do an opening. Wow. I've seen defense not do openings. I've never seen a prosecution not do it. Wow. That is interesting. That is very interesting.
It is a judge thing because Bev, I think, gave him an hour.
Oh, okay.
Or whatever.
So Aaron says it's a judge thing. Looks like we've got court. So let me pull this up for you guys so we don't miss anything. Don't need that open. Okay. All right. Hey, Angie Roberts. I'm hopeful for a quick summary and on to the defense. Me too. Billy Moore, you're great. Hope you are well. Yeah, we are. We're doing pretty good. We got storms rolling in today, into tonight, so it might get a little dicey. Hopefully we won't lose. I think we'll be okay for Monica, but it might be a little dicey for Lori later on. Pammy says, I've seen many judges give time limits, and I think they should, although this trial has a whole bunch of details. That is true. Hey, Miley, if Monica is found guilty, is she looking at a possible life sentence? I believe so, right? Is that in our description? We should have that in our description. I do not have that in our description. Well, Austin's looking at 16 to life, so maybe she's not looking to life. Irish Amy will hang in with you. Thank you. Hey, Justice Obsessed. I had a rebuttal closing in my answer. Oh, yeah. Well, I did not. So I did not. Father, we wouldn't want to miss a word of summary she gives us. Yes. Real happy. Good morning to you. Garen Michael. Hello, hello. Hey, Sherry M. Hello to you. MEG. Good to see you. Thank you for joining us, guys. Really appreciate it. I did not add rebuttal. I was just going off of just her initial, because I know rebuttal is going to come. I don't think she's going to give rebuttal. I might be wrong. I don't know. So I was going with non-rebuttal, just straight, and then defense. And we'll do a new one for rebuttal. How about that? Hey, Maddie's mom. Good afternoon. Judge should set a time limit. This is taking forever. Yeah, it's over 9 hours. 9 hours and 10 minutes. Can you imagine? 9 hours and 10 minutes. She's been talking for 9 hours and 10. I have to actually go to another page. All right, this is day. So I don't know if you guys heard, if you're coming in late, we're going to stop at the morning break. So we're going to go from 12. Usually he breaks around an hour and a half, so 12 to 1:30. Then we're going to shift gears to Lori Daybell because we don't want to miss that. We have Joe Schmo. He's our courtroom insider. He's there. So we're going to stream. And then tomorrow morning, we'll pick up whatever we missed today. And then we'll continue on with Lori. And then Wednesday, we'll pick up whatever we missed for Tuesday. And I'm hoping they're going to be in verdict watch at that point. So we'll stream live. We'll do a dual stream so that we can do both Lori and... well, Lori starts at 2. So we'll have at least from 12 until 1:30 live with Monica every day, no matter what. That will not change. We will do that no matter what. So just so you guys have an understanding, and we have some storms rolling through tonight, later this afternoon into tonight. Right now we have high winds, like there may be 20 mile an hour, not too bad, but it might get a little dicey for later. Right now, I think we're okay. It's going to be into this afternoon, into when we're doing our recap with Joe Schmo. That might get a little weird. So just so you guys know. Hey, Queen Olive Ruth Ann, good morning to you. Good to see you. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate it. Irish Amy, I was not counting rebuttal, and I still say 3+ hours. Rebuttal will be at least another 5. Yeah, depends on who they call, or I'm sorry, depends on who does it. If it's Stagel, or if it's Miss Stagel, or if it's Miss Silverman. We'll see. We'll see see what happens. Hey, Seeking Justice. Good morning to you. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate it. Be sure to take the poll. We have 44 votes. And please hit the like button as you guys come in. That is always appreciated. As we wait for day 3. Day 3 of Miss Silverman's closing. Day 40 overall. She's 9 hours and 10 minutes in. I think. Wait a minute. 9 hours and a half. 9 hours and 30 minutes. Because 90 minutes is an hour and a half. Yeah, she's nine and a half hours in. Hey, Maddie's mom, thank you for gifting the Trial TV Live membership to Carol. Awesome, thank you. Appreciate that. Hey, Lacey, you will be lurking. Fantastic, appreciate it. Paula saying thank you as well. OnlyFans saying thank you. Gina Farley, good morning to you. Oh, did I miss Mona? Is Hey Mona in here? There you are. Hey Mona. It's a half-hour delayed, so they start at 10:30, which would be 1:30 our time, but then they're a half-hour delayed. So they're going from 10:30 to 4:30 with an hour and a half break. That's what they're doing. So it's really 11 for us. Well, for them, it would be 11 till 5. So for us, we're adding that extra, the 3-hour difference. And then we will be doing recaps every night with Joe Schmo. He is our boots on the ground. He's over there at Lori. He's our Hey Mona. He's our Mona and Marty. Leave your Beth alone. Hey, Nanar. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate it. Good to see you. Hope everybody's weekend was good. I mowed my lawn, which was good. I always like to be outside. It's nice. It was a good weekend. We had a nice long weekend. Sinbad will be lurking mostly today. Would have been your son's 41st birthday. I wonder what he'd be like today. Hard to believe he's been gone 20 years. I know. I'm sorry, Sinbad. We appreciate you and even just saying that. So here's to your son. Lacey, Squeege, and Mod, you all fantastic job. Well, thank you, Lacey. Appreciate that. Yeah. Pammy saying, sorry, big hugs to you, Sinbad. Fala sending hugs. G. Stewie sending hugs. Therapist you know sending hugs to Sinbad. Hey, Mona. Sending, everybody's giving you some hugs, Sinbad. So thank you for letting us know. Sherry M, you got 7 inches of rain over the last 4 days, and it snowed in Oklahoma night before last. Yeah, I saw. Just insane. Real happy. I'm a mod for a channel carrying Lori, so I'll be there for her trial, but lurking here till then. All right, cool. Appreciate that. Oh no, Butterfly Dana, the kid that played Dennis the Menace, passed away at 73. Oh, that stinks. Did I name the frog yet? Not yet. I do like Therapist You Know had a good one. Ribbit Plant. I kind of like that one. That was cool. If not, I would like to submit the name of one of my mom's patients, which had me rolling on the floor. Mr. Wigglesworth. That's nice. Mr. Wigglesworth. Queen Olive, my husband and I going to do yard work today, but it rained really hard all night, so not today. Sinbad, your hubby mowed our bright yellow grass. Seriously, it's covered in dandelions. Then it started to rain. Follow the frog or no go. Yeah, I let it go. I got one, actually, I let one patch kind of go. There were a lot of weeds, a lot of flowers, you know, it's good for the bees and butterflies and all that good stuff. So I let it go maybe 2 weeks longer than could have, but it's all good now. Pammy, you were Hopper. So original. There were some good ones. I can't remember them right now because I looked at that like a week ago, so I forget what they were. But Ribbit Plan, I thought that was a good one. I like that one. Dreama, you're getting the weather today that we got yesterday. Yeah, it's true. Whatever whatever New Orleans gets, we always get it like a day later. Hey, Leslie, try to stay dry. Yes, we will. We're ready for it. We need it. We need the rain. We just don't want the high winds and tornadoes and all that lovely stuff that comes along with it, but not nearly as bad as what happened in the plains in the Midwest, that's for sure. See, it's really not supposed to start for us until 8 tonight, so it's really going to be when we're recapping with Joe Schmo, unfortunately. 15 mile an hour, 28 mile an hour wind gusts, so 15 sustained. Yeah, I mean, it's not too bad, but it's supposed to be windy all day, rest of the day, so. Did I see Gilly Pud come in? Gilly, I don't think I can see your and of course Judge is late. There's Gilly Pud. So Gilly Pud, I cannot pull you up on chat, but I'll come in. I'll say hello. Oops, say hello to you here. So because you don't have a name, I cannot pull you up on the chat. Like there, I can't pull you up like that. Lacey, rain in moderation, yes. Gordon, weather has been lovely here in County Durham, UK for about a week. Very strange. You're not expecting lovely weather for a week? We are in Florida. Sherry, we are in Florida. G. Stewie, yes, you're northeast too. It's been really warm here. Can't complain. Hey, Brenda, hello. Hope everyone is safe from all the rain and flooding. Cicely 614, hello to you. Oh, looks like we got...
Jury and also present, good morning. Hope you had a good weekend. And Ms. Ubin, you may continue.
Good morning. Welcome back. When I left off on Friday, we were talking about the various statements the defendant made to law enforcement, and that each time she was interviewed, rather than trying to assist them and provide information, she lied. We talked about this on Friday, and one of the things that Detective Parshall repeatedly asked every time she called into the LAPD was whether or not she had replaced the security system. She indicated she was still waiting for the insurance money, and again, all of these are recorded, and Detective Parshall said it was the first thing that she should do, but you heard she never did. And then we talked about the day after her call in to Detective Parshall, the next night, March 9th, when, as you guys saw, the SIS surveillance crew was following the defendant and Baker, and they followed them that night to the Goodnight Bar and the Laugh Factory Comedy Club. And this is one of the nights where Bella tried to get her mother to come home because she was afraid of being home alone. And of course, we hear the response from Jessica and the, again, text message back from Isabella talking about how she's always home alone. There's never anybody there. She's afraid about being in the house alone, and it's worse when she's alone. It's very clear from the evidence that we heard that she was in distress and fearful. But again, what we learned was that the defendant only cared about herself. And so we also saw the text message where Isabella made the comment that she's going to make a therapy appointment the next day. And then, of course, what we saw is the defendant's attempt to try to make her youngest daughter, Isabella, feel guilty. And you can see that she was successful based on Isabella's response. And then, of course, Jessica saying, Mom, don't feel bad, because she believes her mom is grieving and wants her to be out and be able to enjoy herself. But this has become, obviously, a nightly thing. So again, another manipulation in this case by the defendant, in this case of her daughters, who she was also using to lie for her to people. And she, as we saw, lied to them day after day after day and left them alone to try and recover from this tragedy that was their father's murder. Again, another call, this time on March 16th. Detective Parshall calls the defendant. He mentions to her during this phone call that he's been talking to this burglary crew, which we know was really the detectives from Robbery Homicide Division, wanting to meet with her. And once again, we see the defendant is asking about the DNA results because she's trying to stay a step ahead of law enforcement, and so that she can also report back to Baker, as we talked about last week. Once again, she lies to Detective Parshall and tells them that it's only the children who are beneficiaries of the life insurance policy, and also claims that she's unaware of the fact that Fabio had stock by saying maybe he had some stock. So again, more evidence of the fact that she's lying to law enforcement because she doesn't want them to believe that she has skin in the game or that she has a financial motive here. And then, of course, you heard from Melanie Garibay, Melanie being the show director at Wella, and you saw and heard that the defendant lied to Melanie Garibay by claiming that Fabio knew she was planning this trip with her girlfriends to Las Vegas, and she's using Melanie for her business connections so that she can get a deal in Las Vegas. And so Melanie testified about the first and second round of text messages that she got from the defendant. And here's the first round where she reaches out and she's asking Melanie if she can get her a deal. They have a phone conversation, as you heard from Melanie, and then Melanie proceeds to text her and say, we got you in a suite at the Vidara and a discounted rate. And here you see at the bottom the defendant is asking what's the rate, and we know the rate wound up being $99 a night for the suite that she and Robert Baker shared when they went to Vegas the first time. And then you heard from Ron Ray, who came in from Las Vegas, who was a longtime friend of Robert Baker. And he first meets the defendant in March through Robert Baker. They come to his home, the home he shares with his wife, Michelle. They go out for lunch, and during the time they spent together, not once did the defendant mention that she had been previously married. She never mentions Fabio. She never mentions during the lunch or at their home that she has children. She doesn't mention the fact that she's a widow. And we talked about the fact that there's this odd moment where he's trying to input her contact information into his cell phone, and the defendant and Robert Baker say, just put down Monica Baker. And you heard the defendant acted like she had a lot of money. She asked Ron Ray, who is in the stock market, about how she could invest in the market. She talked about selling an expensive piece of property in the LA area. That would be the house on Queen Victoria. And then she knew Michelle was a real estate agent, so she was asking Michelle about buying another piece of property in the Las Vegas area for Baker, and that they were going to come and go from that property and travel. He also introduced the photographs that you see here, where they all go out to some expensive dinner that night at a restaurant called Andrea's. Again, where the defendant orders an expensive bottle of wine for herself, paid for everybody's dinner, and then again began this crude talk about her sex life with Baker, how great he was in bed, and Ron talked about how she kept grabbing Robert Baker's crotch, which normally you might think he was exaggerating, except that you saw the same behavior photographed. Then they all go out, as you heard, to a nightclub in one of the casinos, and as Ron said, the defendant acted like she was a 22-year-old on spring break. You remember he was describing her behavior as she acted like she was humping Robert Baker up on the stage with the DJ and some of the other despicable conduct. Now, on that same night where the defendant is out partying with Baker, with Ron and his wife Michelle, she takes the time to post again to Instagram. And this is a post that takes place, she does it at 8:06 p.m. And she, as you can see here, is continuing to play her role as the heartbroken widow who lost her best friend. Because, of course, she can't be honest about the fact that she's out partying in Las Vegas with her lover, because that sort of scandalous behavior would destroy what she's trying to create, and that is the perception that she's the victim, so she can engender sympathy and get a lot of people to fall all over themselves to want to help her. So that's the same night. Later on that month, the defendant calls Detective Parshall again on March 30th, and now she's talking about the life insurance again. She says she wants to drop off some paperwork for him to sign, and they have a conversation about the car keys from the Porsche, and she tells them that they were always kept in the drawer, in the kitchen drawer. And we talked last week about that placard number 12 in the kitchen counter where there was a drip of blood belonging to Baker just below the monitor. Again, once the defendant returns from Las Vegas, later that same night that she has this conversation with Detective Parshall, we now see that Jessica is texting her mother, when are you coming home? And you see that we basically have a role reversal. We have the 18-year-old who's acting as the parent, trying to figure out where her mother is and what time she'll be home, because as Jessica testified, after the murder, she frequently didn't know where her mother was at all hours of the night. And then that same conversation goes on. On the following night, you heard March 31st, the defendant slept over at Robert Baker's, but told her daughter she was sleeping at Sheila's, which you'll be able to see again from that text exchange between them. Then you heard from Gail Burlingame, someone who is unconnected really to the defendant or Fabio, but she was a salesperson, as you recall, at the Ford dealership in Thousand Oaks, and she was completely manipulated by the defendant at first, if you recall. When she came in, she said that she was taken by the fact that the defendant seemed to be so grief-stricken, whose husband was brutally murdered, and now she had no money. And the defendant told Ms. Burlingame that she didn't even have enough money to pay her bills. She was desperate for money, and she was waiting for the life insurance money on her husband's life to come in so that she could support herself and her daughters. And so you heard from Gail Burlingame, if you recall, that while the defendant was at the dealership, she made several calls to what the defendant said was her attorney. And it was obvious to Gail at some point that it wasn't an attorney because the defendant was whispering and it didn't sound like a legal discussion to her. The next time Gail reached out to her, after reaching out to corporate headquarters and trying to assist the defendant in being able to turn in Fabio's Ford F-150 because she felt so bad for the defendant, she testified that the defendant seemed much happier, and the defendant reported that she had just gotten the payout from the life insurance money and that she needed a new car. Now we know that's false, but that was the story she gave to Gail Burlingame. And you heard that Gail tried to talk her into keeping Fabio's car because the defendant had said that she and the girls really wanted to keep the car because it made them feel this connection to him, and so Gail went to all these lengths to work out some kind of a deal where they could do that, and now the defendant is basically telling Gail that she wants a new car. And so you heard the defendant returned to the dealership on April 3rd of 2017, and when Gail asked the defendant what her budget was, the defendant said she didn't know. And you heard that during this 5 to 6 long hour interaction between Gail and the defendant kept leveling up to more and more expensive vehicles. The defendant wanted a convertible, but the issue was she wanted black rims, which were so important to her. And when they finally drove the Mustang that the defendant ultimately leased, the defendant made the comment to Gail that she felt like they were Thelma and Louise. So the defendant eventually decided that day on the black Mustang that you see here. The defendant told Gail that she felt happy again because she could start her new life now that she had this new car. But then the defendant decided to call her friend Robert to come in. And she said that she wanted her friend Robert to test drive the car because it might be his too, and that he was going to be driving the car. And you heard what happened, that when he came to the dealership, as we all know, when you go to a dealership to test drive, they always require you to hand over your license, and he refused to do that. And Gail told you that during her interactions that afternoon with the defendant and this individual Robert, it became pretty clear to her that she was being duped by the defendant. You also heard from Cesar Aviles, who was the sales manager at the dealership, that the defendant lied to him initially when she first came in and said that Fabio had been killed inside of the Ford F-150, and so she no longer felt comfortable driving that car, that she cried throughout their meeting. And he recalls that she called a male 3 to 4 times during the course of their meeting, and he could hear the male's voice on the other end of the phone. She wanted to return the car, but as he said, it had nothing to do with price, which was the argument the defense tried to make to you. You heard that Cesar, being the nice guy that he was, offered to buy the vehicle back. It wouldn't cost the defendant anything. She could just turn in the Ford F-150 and walk away from the dealership without getting a new car. Instead, what you heard is when she came back on that April 3rd date and spent so much time with Gail that she wound up leasing this new Mustang for $62,000. And as Cesar talked about, she purchased every available option. There was no negotiation that went on, and that she paid substantially more money. I think he said somewhere between $15,000 and $25,000 more than what it would have cost to just keep the Ford F-150. And you heard that when the defendant came home that day, there were people that were waiting for her at the house who were expecting to have a meeting with her about a tribute that they were putting on for Fabio. And when the defendant came home, she told Melanie Garibay, Carol Protat, some of Fabio's colleagues that she had given an Academy Award-winning performance at the dealership that day. She told them what a good actress she was, which is true, and that she made the salespeople feel sorry for her by playing the grieving widow, which we all knew by that point in the trial was her favorite role to play. And then we heard the defense try to make this sound less despicable than it was by making fun of it and saying, well, who doesn't love a good deal? As if somehow this is all a big joke. In reality, what this is shameful behavior. And the real question is, who would use their husband's murder to get anything? On April 8th, you saw some photographs and the description of additional photographs of the defendant out front of her new Mustang. You can see the decal from DCH Ford in the window, taken by Baker as he's looking out from inside of the driver's seat of the Mustang at the defendant, who's standing out front smoking a cigarette. On that same date, the defendant posts to Instagram a happy birthday to Luigi, Fabio's son, where she pokes fun and says something about every fairy tale having a wicked stepmother, and then goes on to, again, ingratiate herself to her stepson. So again, another example of the defendant using the social media account to try and manipulate people, decent people, especially those closest to her. Then the defendant calls Detective Parshall again on April 17th. He once again asks her about the DVR installation, and once again the defendant lies to him. She says that she never had remote access. Once again, that she wasn't present when the DVR and the new system was installed with the new cameras. Again, another lie. And that Fabio told her the guys had come to do the installation while he was home and put in the new monitor. And then she also says no one had remote access to their new system, which we also know is a lie. She still hadn't replaced the DVR security system that Parshall asks her about, even though at this point we know that State Farm has paid out the money on the home insurance claim because she's painting and buying new carpeting and new curtains. Because, of course, the defendant isn't concerned with security at the house for herself or her daughters, because she knows who the real killer is. And so again, the defendant wants to celebrate Robert Baker's birthday in Las Vegas, so she reaches out again to Melanie Garibay. And Melanie Garibay once again comes through, this time with a 2-bedroom suite, because as you heard, they were going to travel to Las Vegas with Ricardo Cabrera and Sheila. And so she gets her a suite that we heard was normally $600 a night for $199. And then you saw the defendant invited Sheila and Ricardo to join them to help celebrate Baker's birthday. And here she volunteers even to pay for the entire suite herself. And you saw that she sent a picture of the penthouse suite that they were getting, and she sends the picture to Sheila. And then we know that in May, the defendant and Robert Baker flew to Las Vegas for this celebratory vacation, and Sheila and Ricardo traveled separately by car and meet them there. And then, of course, the night before they leave for Las Vegas, she and Robert Baker are once again out until after 3 in the morning, again with the eldest daughter asking her where she is, and the defendant saying at 3:18 that she's almost home. The following day, on May 3rd, the defendant sends these photographs to Sheila saying Vidara Cabana time, and you can see her here with Baker and Al Birdsong in the background. And then, of course, the photographs from the birthday celebration at Marrakesh restaurant that you heard about. As you heard from Ron Ray, this was an expensive restaurant, and the defendant said, don't worry about it, I got money, I'll take care of it. And after this, they went to a strip club that the defendant wanted to go to, where again she ordered expensive wine, became loud and obnoxious. As you heard from Ron Ray, she was grabbing strippers by their breasts and was basically out of control, as Ron Ray described. As he also mentioned, clearly not somebody who was grieving the loss of a 20-year marriage. Then on May 5th, after dinner, we saw the defendant, along with Robert Baker and Sheila and Ricardo Cabrera, go to the Ghost Bar at the Palms Casino. And obviously, these photographs are worth 1,000 words or more because they show a very different picture than the one that was presented for you as this grieving woman who was devastated. And obviously we know from all of the photographs that came out from various individuals that supplied them to law enforcement, when the witnesses described the defendant as extremely happy and the opposite of grief was displayed by her behavior, we saw that wasn't an exaggeration at all in the photos themselves. And they depict exactly what Ron Ray described in March, the same type of behavior. And as Sheila testified, after the murder, the defendant never mentioned her husband, didn't mention her daughters, and that she and Baker appeared to be a couple, just as they had discussed prior to the murder and had planned on several occasions before. Now, in May, the defendant calls Detective Parshall several times because she's fed up. She needs the money. She tells the detective in these recorded calls that she's having difficulties due to their fact that they're delaying the money that she's rightfully entitled to, the money that Fabio left to her through the life insurance. She still has no security system. She's upset that the detectives have not paid out on the policy until she's been cleared. She talks about the fact that the dealership had to buy back Fabio's Ford F-150 because she couldn't afford the $15,000 it would have cost her. But again, she lies to them because she doesn't tell them that she's just leased a brand new, fully loaded Mustang. She tells them that she wants answers, and as you heard from Detective Parshall, he tells her that he can't discuss the case. And that the evidence has to be remain confidential until they conclude their investigation. And at this point, we know that he's already meeting with robbery homicide detectives and setting up the meeting that's going to occur in June. Again, on May 18th, this was the day that Detective Parshall introduces the defendant to the robbery homicide detectives Gable and Tellis. They go to the house, they conduct a walkthrough. We heard the surreptitious recording from inside of Detective Gable's pocket, where they talk about the safe and the slider door in her master bedroom. The defendant again says the safe was untouched, that she never got a text from the AT&T Digital Life system from the mirror sensor I talked about last week. Only she gets those texts to her phone. Fabio does not, which means on the date of January 23rd, when she opened the safe to remove the gold coins, Fabio wouldn't have known about it. And she says that they barely use the safe. The only thing Fabio or they keep in the safe is the gun. and now it's been minimized, and she says in a couple of gold coins. And once again, she tells Detective Gable and Tellis that she doesn't have access to the camera system remotely through her phone. Just of note, there's a piece of evidence that was played, but it was very quick. It's an exhibit on the day prior to this of Al Birdsong, where he calls the defendant on her cell phone and leaves a message to have Rob call me. So again, showing the connections between the various individuals involved in this conspiracy. He knows her cell phone number. Now, on May 24th, the defendant again makes a call to Detective Parshall. She now is getting desperate. She tells them that they don't even have a roof over their head, really, even though she's living in this large, expensive home, going on one trip after another. And of course, she doesn't mention any of that to law enforcement. She tells Detective Parshall that MetLife needs one last confirmation in writing to complete the clearance, because now all the children have been cleared, but she has not. And she asks him repeatedly on whether there's anything they can do or we can do to speed up this process so that she can get the money. And Detective Parshall tells her that the burglary detectives want to meet with her again around the 9th of June, but we know that's when she's going to New York. That same day, May 24th, she's packing because we know the next day she leaves to fly to Myrtle Beach with Robert Baker so they can go to Beach Bike Week. And we heard that Morella and Salma Cherry were at an industry memorial for Fabio in Toronto during this time period. And as Morella said, the defendant said that she couldn't go because she had already planned to go to Myrtle Beach to walk a golf course that was on Fabio's bucket list, and she was going to walk the course alone in his honor. And then also you heard from her sister Anna, who knew she was lying, as well as Deborah Obad, who also knew the defendant was lying. And then, of course, we heard the testimony from Deborah Obad, which was brought out not on direct exam, of course, but on cross-examination by Ms. Stagel, that Deborah Obad told Detective Parshall in a recorded call, "I've got news for her," meaning Monica. "It was Pebble Beach, bitch, not Myrtle Beach." That was on Fabio's bucket list. So we heard that everybody knew this, but again, people want to bury their heads in the sand because they don't want to see what's in front of them, because it is pretty painful and upsetting to believe that you've been duped and lied to over and over again by someone who's supposed to be your close friend or your sister or your family member or your mother. Of course, during this trip, once again, we see the same repetitive behavior that we've seen from the defendant from the beginning, where she posts while she's in Myrtle Beach partying to the Instagram account to, again, maintain this public image that she's been so painstakingly creating so that people will think that she's still heartbroken over Fabio. And you can see the last line, "Missing you is full time." She comes back on May 31st. She returns from Myrtle Beach. We know from the bedding here, this is Baker's bedding that we saw from the search warrant photos, so we're able to identify her location. She's in Baker's bed. She's wearing Baker's Army t-shirt. But once again, she posts to the Instagram picture that you see to the right, a photograph of her wearing a Fabio tribute shirt that's been created by the company with the caption Fabio, and she's posing in it even as she's posting, as she's laying in Baker's bed in his shirt. So we see that the defendant is living the new life that she planned to create with Baker, spending all of her time with Baker, and we can see how much this 20-year marriage to Fabio meant to her. And we also know that she's telling Detective Parshall at the same time, everything sucks, while she's going to Vegas, Myrtle Beach, going to comedy clubs, lying to her daughters, her family, her friends, and Fabio's colleagues. So Deborah Obad, at trial, you heard that she tried to take back all of her prior damaging statements because she's got to get her statements in line with the party line here to try and get her friend off. Even going so far as to admitting that she lied at the grand jury because she so wants to help the defendant and her family, which, as I talked to you about last week, are things that you can take into account, such as bias, interest, motive to lie, admissions of being untruthful. She told you on cross-examination that she suspected the defendant was having an affair. She tried to make it sound like it was later in 2017, but of course on cross-examination all her prior statements were brought up, where she mentioned it was back at the beginning of summer. That she knew that Baker slept over while Fabio was out of town from big blabbermouth Jessica. These are the girls that she feels so close to and feels like she's their second mother. But she never warned Fabio, her close friend, who she claimed, she said, watch out for the racquetball friends, and that's supposed to let him know that his wife might be plotting something behind his back. Never told him she thought the defendant was having an affair because, as she said, she couldn't confirm it, yet she knew that Baker had slept over. On Friday, January 20th, we learned prior to the murder, the Miss Obad made a plan for Jessica to babysit that following Monday, January 23rd, the day of the murder, at 4 p.m., which, again, she tried to modify her prior statements. We heard that on January 23rd, when she got to the Sementilli home after receiving a call that she should come over immediately and send Jessica back home, the defendant was saying they killed him. They took the car. And recall, this is prior to anyone seeing the surveillance video that indicated there were two individuals that were participants in this crime. And that on that same night, January 23rd, when she came back to the home after going home to find somebody to watch her child and coming back to help out Monica and the girls, the defendant repeatedly was talking about how she was going to pay for university for her girls, how she was going to pay for health insurance, and that she requested that Obad make contact with several individuals at Fabio's company. We also heard that there was a recorded conversation with Detective Parshall on February 14th, where the defendant told Detective Parshall that the defendant said to Luigi exactly what Luigi testified to. Don't worry, Fabio took good care of you. There's lots of insurance policies. And Obad also told him during this same recorded interview on February 14th that at the wake on January 29th, Baker went into Monica's bedroom where Monica was at the time. Possibly that's when the burner phone gets handed off. We also heard there was another recorded call where Obad calls Parshall on March 7th of 2017, and she asks him why he hasn't put a tracker on the defendant's vehicles, not on Baker's vehicle, on the defendant's vehicles. She wants law enforcement to follow the defendant because she suspects the defendant, even though now she denies that. She recalled that she may have referred to the defendant as a liar, but what we heard from these recorded calls is that she called the defendant a liar over and over and told Detective Parshall that the defendant lies about everything. They also discussed the fact the defendant was going on all of these trips, that she went to Vegas, and that she didn't check in even with the girls anymore when she traveled. We heard that the Defense interviewed Miss Obad numerous times. One of those occurred on July 5th of 2017 after the defendant had already been arrested, where she repeated to them, just as she told Detective Barshell, that she saw the defendant and Baker coming out of Monica's bedroom during the wake. We also heard that on March 11th, she drove by the Sementilli home when the defendant had painters there painting the home. And as she said, this was to see what was going on. And when she drove by, she saw Baker's vehicle out front, so she took a picture of the black Expedition and sent it immediately to Detective Parshall and directed him to find out who the vehicle belonged to. So again, when you hear anybody in this case say, well, this is somebody who seemed to be stalking, the only person who involved in any type of stalking behavior in this case was Miss Obad. She also told the detectives that she had told the defendant she needed to replace the security system, but the defendant never did. It fell on deaf ears. She also was asked about her testimony at the grand jury in August of 2017 when the facts would have been fresh in her mind, and that while she was under oath, Obad testified that the defendant, again, told her to contact various people at Wella the night of Fabio's murder regarding the life insurance money. You heard that she referred to herself as Nancy Drew, and that was because she believed she was an investigator on this case. And also, you heard about the fact that she then tried at trial to get you to believe that somehow she might have gotten confused at the grand jury, or that she said things at the grand jury that weren't true. So, one of the things, as I mentioned, you can take into account with her is the bias and the motive to lie, and she gave you plenty of that in terms of talking about how close she felt to the family and the daughters and gave them a place to live for 3 years, that she refers to herself as their second mother. But another thing you can take into account, of course, is the fact that she admitted to lying on prior occasions, specifically at the grand jury. What does speak volumes, and I don't know if you all caught this, but when she was asked whether or not she had ever visited the defendant, who was one of her closest friends, she indicated that in all the time the defendant had been in custody over the last 8 years, she hadn't made one visit to visit her, and that she only spoke to her briefly by phone, and that was when the defendant's family or her daughters were at her home, and the defendant called there to speak to them. So, again, she was also asked why she didn't warn the defendant, her close friend, that she believed douchebag Rob had brutally murdered her husband and was still hanging out with him, and she told you that was because she didn't want to break the trust that she had with the defendant. Yet you also heard in the same cross-examination the testimony about her going behind the defendant's back to law enforcement, repeatedly telling them that the defendant was a liar, telling them to put trackers on the defendant's vehicles because she was suspicious of her, that she spied on her, that she accessed the defendant's computer files while she was out of town, and that she had the defendant followed from the airport. You also heard on cross-examination that when the defendant returned from Toronto on the night of her 20th anniversary to Fabio, that the defendant went out until 1 in the morning, and Obad said that was something that the blabbermouth Jessica told her, Anna, and Monica's mother, that she, Monica's sister and mother, colluded together to try and gather information. But you also heard, on the other hand, that Detective Parshall wanted to reach out and speak to Anna, the defendant's sister, but on multiple occasions, Nancy Drew told Detective Parshall that Anna wasn't trustworthy. And that obviously was because she wanted to be the sole source of information to law enforcement, because obviously it made this woman feel very important, and you could plainly see through her testimony, bless you, that she's the kind of person that needs that because she thinks she's smarter than everybody else. We heard that she and the defendant's mother looked through the defendant's computer while the defendant was in Myrtle Beach with Robert Baker at the end of May, that they found receipts for Uber and bars the defendant went to, and she then called Detective Parshall to tell him that the defendant and Baker were on Craigslist swinging, that the defendant was using a fake name, Madonna, and then of course Miss Obad admitted she didn't know this side of her friend Monica, and so she sent someone to the airport to spy on her when she came back to see who she was with. On June 5th of 2017, just several days prior to the arrest in this case, there was another recorded call that Obad made to Detective Parshall, where she told him the defendant is fucking other couples, repeated that Monica's sister Anna is not to be trusted, that after the murder, the defendant always had her cell phone on her everywhere she went, and that Anna became angry with her when she said, I think your sister's having an affair. Anna said, my sister would never do such a thing. And we also heard that after her arrest, the defendant called her friend Miss Obad and asked her to find her an attorney. Despite all of that, nothing changes her mind, just like the defendant's sister Anna, that the defendant was happily married. So again, another person who's just as delusional as the defendant's family, that she proceeded to throw under the bus, as we heard about from her numerous calls to law enforcement. Now, just before the Mirror Awards, we heard that Sal Macheri went to LA Fitness to work out, and he ran into the defendant, and that she was there working out with a man who he didn't recognize until he subsequently saw the defendant's photograph next to a photograph of Robert Baker on the news, reporting their arrests on June 14th. And then he was able to piece together the person the defendant was with in early June prior to the arrest was in fact her lover, Robert Baker. We also know that prior to her arrest, the defendant was doing some research on what law enforcement could do in terms of tracking her phone and what they could see if they got into her phone with respect to her messages. As I mentioned last week, the defendant did a very good job cleaning up her computer and her phone, her messages, her encrypted app, all of those things. And all of that is evidence that you can take into account. We also know that when the defendant flew home from the Mirror Awards, where Fabio was receiving a Lifetime Achievement Award posthumously in June that she went to accept on his behalf, she also lied to Sam Pulera. If you recall, Sam was at the Mirror Awards. He was going to do the defendant's hair for the event, and she starts telling him that everyone at Wella has cut her off, and that Sal Macheri wouldn't help her. And this, of course, is after the fact that they've flown her to this event and various other events first class, that they've paid her Fabio's salary for 6 months, they've written off Fabio's car, they've gotten her business rates on their hotel rooms when they traveled, so on and so forth. And you heard that during these complaints to Sam, she also complained about the fact that Luigi had gotten his share of the life insurance, but that she hadn't, and that she complained to him so much about the fact that she needed money, they needed money, and that they had no money, that he offered to give her money. And she told him that she had gone to Myrtle Beach in order to walk a golf course in Fabio's honor for his birthday. You also heard that while she was in Toronto for these awards, she was staying with her family, and you heard that there was a confrontation that took place where her sister, her mother, and her brother-in-law confronted her about what they had found in her computer, about the affair, her use of the name Madonna, and the sex dates that she had set up for herself and Rob. And you recall what Anna described as the defendant's response to this family meeting. And it wasn't shame, as I mentioned earlier. In fact, it was righteous indignation. She couldn't believe she was being asked these questions and refused to answer and walked away. And here she is flying back after that family confrontation to LA wearing Baker's army shirt and taking selfies that she sends to him because, as we know, during this trip, the first end of it, or the first leg of it, is when she flies out to New York City for Vanessa's medical school graduation, and she gets that email, that fake email from Detective Parshall. She believes she's going home to meet up with Baker because she's going to finally be cleared to receive, at long last, Fabio's life insurance proceeds. And then, of course, the day of the arrest, she messages Baker in the morning that she's on the computer cleaning up, getting rid of anything that can potentially tie her to the murder. We know that a short while later, Robbery Homicide Division has been planning for her return. They have a task force of people to finally take down this woman who's been lying and cheating all this time, who they know participated in the conspiracy to have her husband murdered. And so she's pulled over by Officer Curtis Davis and his partner. You heard that Detective Camacho, who you see there on the top right, is responsible for recovering the phones from the vehicle, including the defendant's 2 phones that are in the photograph in the center, in the Mustang inside of her Porsche, inside of the purse, as well as Baker's Samsung S8. You heard that his Samsung S4 that he previously used was found during a search warrant at his apartment at the Independence address that day, that the defendant's home, a search warrant is served there. Her iPad, her desktop computer, various other items are seized. And then you heard that when they recover the defendant's Apple iPhone, the iPhone 7, iPhone 119 that I talked to you about during opening statement, there's this whole conversation that happens at the cell door where the detectives are trying to get the password so they can open her phone so that they can download the contents, and she gives them one set of numbers after another or after a number, all of which are false. Turns out the password was Robert Baker's birth year, 1962. And so she intentionally locks the phone by giving them all these passwords, so eventually the phone has to be sent to Celebrate. They unlock it and we get into it anyway. And then you also heard the other item was that ZTE flip phone 120, the burner phone from Baker that we talked about last week, which the defendant also talked about in the various recordings from the lockup with Robert Baker. If you recall, the defendant and Baker, after they are removed from the Mustang, they are placed in the back of the black and white patrol car where a recording device is set up. Oops. This is only 53 seconds. Or maybe I'm supposed to just click it. Maybe it's just not come up. Push this little button.
listen. Gotta get a lawyer immediately.
Somebody did this.
Okay. So as you recall, we played for you the relevant portion of this during our case, and it's been a while probably since you've remembered this, but you can play it over the short version that we have clipped for you, or you can play the long version if you choose to do so. But again, she says deny everything. Got it? Everything. So again, as I mentioned last week, they're clearly not covering up for an affair, right? Because you don't get put into the back of a patrol car for having an affair. And then you heard Baker stay, as we talked about again last week, stay in protocol, stay in protocol. Again, they've planned for this. They know this might eventually happen. And then the defendant's response is, somebody did this. Somebody talked. And they whisper. Again, the reason she's whispering is because, again, at the very beginning of the recording, Baker says, there's recording devices probably all over this thing. And you heard that that should have been the case, but unfortunately, everything that LAPD did to have duplicate listening devices in the back seat, one was turned off instead of being turned on, another one wasn't working, another one wasn't put in, one problem after another, but we still get a fair amount of admissions by the defendant and whispering, which I told you can take into account with respect to consciousness of guilt. Now, the reason the defense wanted to play the long version for you was because, as you recall, in the long version, you can hear these long periods of time where the defendant is gasping for breath, right? Because the argument is, oh, look at how badly law enforcement treated her. She's in the back of a patrol car. The problem is the guy next to her is having no problem breathing and speaking. She's having a panic attack, right? Because it's one thing to plan for your eventual arrest and what's coming next. It's another thing to actually be in the situation where you're taken into custody and you hear on the radio that you're being arrested for murder and you're now in the back of a patrol car. You also heard from Detective Gable with respect to what happened after the defendant and Baker are transported to Van Nuys Station. The first thing the defendant does, he comes to the cell door, and like I said, she provides various codes for the phone. I think one was 1972, and some others that you'll see in the recording and in the transcript. It turns out, it's, like I said, it's his birth year. She also comes up with this fake story about the ZTE burner phone. She says she found it in the garage just before she left for New York and Toronto in June of 2017, that she was on her way to the store with this phone. She was going to have them hook it up so she could see what was on it, so she could figure out what it was. And as you know, the problem with that whole story is she took that phone with her on January 31st, 5 months prior, when she went to Toronto, and I showed you that last week from the Celebrite report where it says, "Welcome to Toronto." So, and then she and Baker discuss the story that she's given law enforcement about the burner phone, and he says, "Oh, that's good. You can just say you found it in the back of the truck, or I left it there." So again, they're trying to concoct and get their stories straight so they can present a united defense. And then also, we hear that she tells them when they come to the cell door that they want the combination to the safe. They want to go into the safe. And you saw from the Celebrate some of the reports we put in for June 14th, when the detectives go out from robbery homicide to serve the search warrants, because there's simultaneous warrants going down at the Queen Victoria residence as well as at Baker's apartment on Independence. The safe is opened and closed numerous times, and it keeps sending the text messages from Digital Life because they keep opening the mirror to look to see, to make sure somebody's gone in there. And so on that Celebrate report for June 14th, they keep opening the mirror over and over again, and it works just like she said. It sends messages to her phone, and you'll see that on the Celebrate report for June 14th. So we know, like I said, that she deleted the one for the day of the murder, January 23rd, because it shows up on the mobility records, even though on her phone Celebrate report it's been deleted. And so she also tells the detective she doesn't know the combination for the safe, only Fabio used it, she doesn't know it. Another set of lies. And then, again, you guys are now experts on Perkins operations, and I can actually say Perkins operation, you know exactly what I'm talking about. They put her into the cell with this undercover cellmate, and she repeatedly changes her story. And the cellmate is acting like she's an idiot, but that she's catching on, because initially the defendant tells her cellmate she didn't have anything but a friendship with Baker. He was her close friend. They hung out together. He was a family friend. And she goes, oh, so he was also friends with your husband? And she goes, yeah, but really more with me. And then it kind of evolves, and as the detectives keep coming to the cell door, the inmate then says to her, well, it sounds like it was more than just a friend. And she says, well, he was certainly not my boyfriend. And then she goes on to say, I didn't really want a husband. I didn't want a boyfriend. And then it goes on to talking about the fact that they took some trips together. And she says, but it was only 2. And it was always with 4 or 5 or 6 other people. And we always shared a room. But when we hang out, a lot of the times it's my idea. So again, getting rid of any defense they have that she's being forced into this relationship. And she tells the cellmate, you know, law enforcement, they never asked me about Baker, which obviously is not true. She also tells the undercover cellmate she never cheated on her husband. She wasn't seeing Baker before the murder. And then when they come back, Detective Gable comes back to the door and says, hey, we've gotten into your phone. We've seen the photos. We know about the relationship. We know about the trips you've been taking, because, of course, both G&D and SIS have been following them, and they know about all of this information, including from the trackers on the vehicles. She then changes her story and says, well, Baker, he was her confidant. He was her lover. He was her everything. We know that to be the case. And then she says, okay, well, maybe Baker was a little bit more than just after her husband's murder. Now she's starting to admit that maybe a little bit before his murder they started to be involved. And then she comes up with this story where she tells him that she cracked Baker over the head with her racket, and that he probably won't remember this. But there was blood that was all over her racket and all over her shoes. And you heard that there was one spot on one shoe, and there's no blood on any racket. And you also have the LA Fitness records. That I think that's the last exhibit that we put in, so that you could see later on when she and Baker are in the lockup together, talking about the racquetball injury story and trying to get the facts together. When they say, well, it can't be that day because that was the day Jessica said I worked out with her, so it might have been the day before. So we put in the records from LA Fitness, because you'll see that on the 21st and 22nd, the defendant did not go to LA Fitness. And then she goes on and she tells her cellmate that she's been so helpful to law enforcement. She's given them all the information they asked for. She doesn't know what an encrypted app even is. What are they asking her about? She's never used the safe. She doesn't have the code to open it. Only her husband did the safe. And then the cellmate starts to ask her, well, it sounds like from what they're telling you, they're saying Baker's DNA is all over the crime scene. Sounds like he did it. Like, he's the one. The guy that you've been having an affair with, that's the guy that killed your husband. What are you going to do? And the first thing the defendant says, and nobody's mentioned anything about money, she says, well, it's not for money. It's not for gain. She brings that up all on her own, the financial gain special circumstance. She knows exactly what's going on. And she then proceeds to say, I assume Baker had his own money because, he's like, he managed people and things like that. And then she goes on to say things about how her husband never treated her badly, that he was the love of her life. Of course, this is the same person she's been married to for 20 years almost, and she never spent any time grieving because she was too busy going out with her lover. And that she knows that her husband Fabio would have fought tooth and nail to protect them, his family, from anybody that came to the house. But of course, not so much when he's overpowered by two individuals and he's taken by surprise by lying in wait. And then they take her out of the cell, and after Detective Gable has told the defendant Baker's blood is all over the crime scene, it's in the garage, it's in the kitchen, it's in the entryway, his blood is all over the house, we know it's him. This is what she says. She volunteers this statement. I don't believe that Rob did that. The only other thing I can think of that his DNA would be in my house is probably when I cracked him in the hand when we played racquetball. I brought the towel home. Maybe you were wondering last week why I kept referring to this bloody, dripping towel. It's because of this. This is the statement that she gives to law enforcement, to Detectives Gable and Tellis. So you would have to believe, as I said last week, that she brought home a towel that was so covered in blood that it is literally dripping blood all over the entry, all over the kitchen, all over the garage, and that Delia Rivera, who appears to be someone who is extremely conscientious, just forgot to clean up all these blood drops all over the house and left that day with blood everywhere. So again, when you saw us asking questions about, well, where's the bloody towel when she's walking out of LA Fitness, or where is Baker's hand dripping blood when he walks out of LA Fitness, we didn't see anything like that. And again, just like I mentioned last week, how does the blood somehow miraculously from this dripping towel get transferred to various objects that were clearly strewn around her bedroom to set up a staged burglary scene? So before they're even arrested and charged with murder, they start creating their joint defense. They were involved in a conspiracy to commit murder where they act together. They were involved together in creating a defense, and they came up with a joint story that they were going to tell to law enforcement to try and explain away the DNA in the house. Because remember, Detective Parshall was not giving the defendant any of the results of the DNA testing, but Baker knew he cut himself there, so they had to find a way to be able to explain that away. And we heard that in some of the recordings in the lockup. And then, as you heard, even after this conversation, again, where the detectives are telling the defendant, hey, your lover's blood is all over the crime scene, the defendant continues her relationship with Baker after being told this. So recall, of course, with respect to the testimony of Detective Mitzi Roberts about how she went through the 60 hours of them in the cells numerous times, over and over and over again, and yet there's no recordings in 60 hours. There's no recordings of the defendant saying to Baker, how is it that your blood is all over my house? What did you do? She never confronts him with the fact that she now knows and is discussed with her cellmate, well, now we know, never confronts him with the fact that he's the actual killer. Instead, what you hear is the two of them acting together to explain it away in 60 hours. And you heard that again, in these 60 hours of them conversing in the lockups, whether it's here or in Van Nuys, they don't talk about Fabio by name. They don't even use his name. They refer to him as him. It had a picture of him, Baker says, when they're talking about a news article. And the defendant says the estate lawyers have been hired to protect his assets. Or the defendant talks about his family, because he's not even important enough to mention by name. It's like he never even existed. And of course, another thing that you're never going to hear in any of the recordings, you never hear the defendant expressing any concern about law enforcement catching or apprehending or identifying the real killers, or the actual killers in this case, if it's not her and Robert Baker. And again, wouldn't somebody who found out that their lover had come into their home and murdered their children's parent want nothing to do with that person ever again, knowing the way it was done in such a cold, brutal, vicious manner, where he's stabbed to death at their home, taking away all of their sense of safety in their home? If you knew that your lover had committed a vicious murder of your husband, stabbed him through the heart, wouldn't you confront that person and then want nothing to do with them? What goes on in the lockup for years defies logic and common sense. You heard in the first lockup recording, which took place June 29th, a couple weeks after they're arrested, the first thing the defendant is telling Baker is, no deals, none. However, she then goes on to say, if there's more evidence, we're fucked. Again, they're not talking about covering up for an affair. If there's more evidence, we're fucked. I'm denying everything except our affair. Well, what else is there if it's only an affair? Ride or die. I was asked if it was you. I said, no fucking way. She's talking about how she's covering up for him, for the two of them, and what they planned. And what is Baker's response from the very beginning? Stick with the program. Just like you heard in the back of the black and white protocol. And he refers to them as Bonnie and Clyde. He calls her Mrs. Baker. And he tells her, destroy the letters that he's provided to her. Passed to her in the lockup in Van Nuys. Flush them down the toilet. And she says, the next time that they come to the courthouse in Van Nuys, August 7th of 2017, I have stuff for you too, but you have to flush it. And we heard the sound of the flushing. And then she tells him the burner, meaning the burner phones. They're discussing the evidence in this case. And she talks about the assets. Everything's been frozen. I can't even sell my house now. And he tells her, don't worry, babe, resolute. In other words, stay strong. August 24th, the courthouse lockup here, right out of this courtroom, in this door right here. She says to him, to Baker, they have a camera at Payless Shoes. They have no video of you. Remember how he met up with her there outside of the Payless? And he says, of us? Because of course it's the two of them meeting up, not just him. And she says, none. The video was only for a month or two, right? And then he says, and nothing on the other one at night too. Well, what are they talking about? They're talking about the night before, where they were going to kill him at the strip mall, January 22nd. Nothing on the other one at night too. They think they've made it. They're going to get out of this. And then the defendant says, I answered the way I was supposed to when they're talking about their interviews with law enforcement. Remember I said they got together and planned how they were going to answer and what their stories were going to be, I answered the way I was supposed to, meaning the way we planned. I'll never abandon you. And what does he say? This is way back in August of 2017. Same thing that you saw right in front of your eyes when he came into this courtroom. I'll take the blame before anything. I'll lie and take it. If everything goes south, I will figure a way to get us, to break you out. Consciousness of guilt. And here the defendant, on August 31st, tells the defendant, I told my lawyers, I love him. I can't not talk to him. And on November 2nd of 2017, I want to go home with you. I heard they can't get into it because it's encrypted. Otherwise, I'm dead. She's talking about the messages back and forth, right? From Viber and WhatsApp. Otherwise, I'm dead. Meaning if they get into what we've encrypted and they're able to get what we've deleted, I'm dead. And on January 4th, I'm going to put your initials on me, right? We heard them in the back talking about tattooing, and then we saw their jail letters and the pictures she draws where she puts an RB tattoo either on her back or on her finger. And then she says, someone's going to pay for this. And then, of course, the letters, which we went through one afternoon. On June 28th of 2017, we know the defendant sent numerous letters, jail kites, to Baker while they were in custody. And she refers to Baker as her ride or die. She calls him her everything. Not her husband of 20 years, Baker. Ride or die, 100%. We must do what we said we would. And she refers to herself in all of these letters and signs them Mrs. Baker. And she talks about sticking to their protocol. She says, as you can see on the cutout piece, I've stuck to protocol. Again, meaning their plan. It admitted to love affair of about a year. That's all they're going to admit to, just as she said, as you heard her say out of her own mouth on the recordings. And then the way she says it at the end, always on my mind, with all of my fiber, Mrs. Baker. And then in another letter, this one was dated July 1st, ride or die, MB for Monica Baker. This one sent through, as you heard, a pen pal. Another inmate's name, Nishia Hayer. Ride or die, always and forever. Like we're talking about high school kids passing notes in class. That's how serious they're taking these charges. Here, July 7th, the defendant says, resolute, sticking to the plan. That's what that means. Protocol. She repeats the same phrase Baker said. Right? And here, August 8th, 2017. The defendant says, I love you so very much, baby. Thank you for fighting. Thank you for loving me. My soulmate. Love, Monica Baker, for eternity. This is as she's facing murder charges in this case. This is the stuff she's writing. Because of course they don't think they're going to get caught. And then she writes this, dated August 10th of 2017. I need all of you. I can't wait to see you again, my love. And of course, where do they see each other? Every time they come to court, right? Because they're co-defendants in this indictment. Yours eternally, Monica/Madonna Baker. And like I said, in the drawings that she keeps sending to him, very similar to the photographs that she takes. Nobody's forcing her to take the photos. Nobody's forcing her to draw these things. My man, my baby, my love, my bestie, my soulmate. Remember when she told Detective Castro at the Wella Memorial, May 29th of 2017, when they're talking to her, and she says, my boyfriend was my husband. He was my soulmate, right? And then here, this is what she puts in writing that she doesn't think they're ever going to see. And again, R.D., ride or die, Mrs. Robert L. Baker, Robert Louis Baker, because I told you she has him in her contacts under a fake name in her phone. Remember that, Louisa? You are everything to me, she writes in this last line behind these characters she draws. And then you saw and heard about the encrypted kites that they send to each other. In this case, Baker was leaving encrypted messages for her in the lockup going up the staircase. And you heard from Detective Balderrama that she wasn't able to take possession of these items because he had his eyes on her the entire time. There's a secret way that they communicated while they were in there, as you heard from Detective Roberts. Very similar to the coding or the encrypted apps that they used when they were on the outside. And then we heard that they went to great efforts to communicate without anybody knowing, even their attorneys. Again, another attempt to try and manipulate the system. And you heard them in the jail recordings where they talk about clean calls, where they use other inmates' PIN numbers so they can't be traced back to them. And they call through third parties, as I discussed last week. You even heard Baker, when he calls his friend Lynch, the lawyer, calls through the law office, and the law office, they're using the law office for their ongoing conspiracy to communicate. He refers to the defendant, his girlfriend, as my crimey, his crime partner. Because again, who's going to be listening to somebody calling a law office? Those are privilege calls, aren't they? Yeah, not when they're not actually your lawyer. Not when you're trying to cover up for a conspiracy to commit murder that hasn't ended because you haven't yet received the benefit, meaning the money, the object of the conspiracy.
So my research 15.
All right, guys, there's their morning break. And we're going to stop it here and get ready for Lori. So that was another hour and 25 minutes. All right, so we're going to end the stream here. I'm going to give a recap, and then we're going to end Monica. And we're going to go over to Lori Daybell because she starts in about a half an hour. So Beth starts out. Beth didn't seem to have as much. She didn't have that passion today, or I don't know. It just seemed like she was a little down. More so Thursday and Friday, she had a lot more fire in her voice. But maybe she has the Monday blues. All right, so she starts out with more lies. Monica told lie after lie after lie. She talks about the Las Vegas trip and Melanie Garibay and their text messages. Then she shows the photos from March 2017 of Baker and her at Las Vegas. Then she talks about these texts going back and forth from Monica to Jessica. And on the slide, she has Deborah Obad, a.k.a. Nancy Drew. Although I think she misspelled it. It looked like it was Deborah O'Dad. That's why I had to question it. But then I double checked and it is Obad. Then she played the back of the police car audio. Monica denies everything. Monica says, deny everything. Got it? Everything. And this was a good point. Miss Silverman said, you don't get into the back of a police car just because you're having an affair. Fair point, right? And then this one, I mean, there's so many points, right? There's so many nails in the coffin, but this is definitely one of them, at least one from today. You don't. Ooh, that was weird. That was on them, not on me. I should just pause it, to be quite honest. Let me just pause it, because I'm going to end it anyway. this bloody dripping towel, right? There was so much blood all over the house that he would have like had to have been like have his finger amputated, for crying out loud, to have that much blood. Like that the towel is so covered in blood that she gets it home from LA Fitness, somehow puts it in a bag or something. They don't even explain that. She gets home and there's enough blood on this towel that it's dripping all over the place. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. Oh, and then Dahlia, who is the housekeeper, didn't clean up all of that. I mean, there was blood everywhere. Kitchen, bedroom, foyer, living room. I mean, it was just all over the place, right? And while they're in lockup, they never refer to Fabio. They always say his and him. And then she's like, it's like he never even existed. I thought that was a good one. In Monica, again, their jail lockup, she's like, talking to Baker, no deals, none. If there's more evidence, we're effed. Fair point. Again, if they're just going to keep saying, oh, it's all about the affair, all about the affair, all about the affair. But I heard they can't get in because it's encrypted. Otherwise, I'm dead. That's the other thing she said. So, all right. So I'm going to end it soon here. We're going to pick up on Lori Daybell, and tomorrow morning we're going to pick up what we missed today. So if you guys want to continue watching with us, that's cool. We're going to pick it up tomorrow. If you want to go elsewhere, that's fine too. But we will pick back up on this at I think 8:30. We're going to pick up. Yes, we're going to pick up what we're missing now tomorrow at 8:30 Eastern. So if you want to join us then, cool. If you want to watch this on your own, obviously that's your choice. But for those that want to go join us over at Lori, please do. We have Joe Schmo. He is our courtroom insider. He's there. He's tweeting, posting, and we're going to have him on tonight. We're going to do a dual stream with him, the entire trial for Lori Daybell. So I'm excited about that. Before we go, do you guys have any questions, comments? What are you guys thinking about? Dreama, thanks for the best recaps. No problem. Thank you. Sherry says, if a juror sees this differently, I'm going to drink myself like a fish. I know, right? New Lori portal. Yes, we will portal you over. Yep, we are going to portal over. Portaling. Yep, we've got a redirect set up. You guys are in good hands. All you have to do is just hang tight. Hey, Mona says, I'm so glad you're doing Lori breakdowns. Your voice is so soothing. Thanks. Lori's not so much. Thank you. Appreciate that. Sinbad says, squeak caps are the best. Squeak caps. He is JS Media. Pretty sure he's JS Media. If you can't find him there, just go to our handle, Trial TV Live, and we've been posting stuff there, tagging him. We actually posted a shot of him waiting in line. That's pinned. Yeah, it's JS_media. JS_media. So the last thing he posted was 2 hours ago. He's in the line for opening arguments. So that's the last thing. And then we'll be doing a recap with him. Oh, Gigi's there too. Pretty Lies and Alibis. She's there as well. So we got all kinds of cool people. Portal. Mel says, are we using one of Chad Daybell's shaky portals? I hope not. Seatbelts on, arms in, legs together. You're not going to miss Lori. Talk about a circus. That's why we're covering it. It was either Lori or Karen or do some other random. So we chose Lori because we have Joe Schmo in the courtroom. Tray tables in their upright positions. Make sure your trays and seat belts are in their upright position. All right, everybody's ready? All right, well, let's do it. I'm going to end this stream. Thank you so much for joining us today for the morning session of day 40. We will pick up tomorrow morning at 8:30 Eastern, and we'll play everything that we missed today, and then we'll go into live tomorrow, because don't forget, we have from 12 until 1:30. We can always get the morning in. So hope is tomorrow, finish up this afternoon's, well, rest of the morning and then this afternoon, which I have no problem. We will be able to do that. And then we'll pick up live Tuesday's day live at 12 o'clock. Hopefully, fingers crossed, state will have finished and defense will have started theirs. And then Wednesday, the hope is that Wednesday will be in live verdict watch. I don't want to be like behind with live verdict watch. So everybody's ready. Cool. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Erin, for all that she does. Thank you to our mods. You guys are the best. And thank you, chat. Be sure to thank your mods as you leave. And we'll see you guys in about 10 minutes. Thanks. I am going to end it here. Where's my ending? Here we go. Yeah.